What's going on, everybody? Alex Hughes here with the North Pacific Homes Group in Victoria. And in today's video, we had the opportunity to interview a very close friend of mine, Sonny Tathgar with Stevenson, Lukes and Lee. He's a lawyer here in Victoria. And in this interview, we're going to be going over exactly what his role is in the real estate transaction, what common issues that he's seen, and how we can make you a more educated buyer or seller. Now, if you do like this video, please give us a like, subscribe to our channel for more valuable content, and please spread the word. Well, let's get into it. All right, everybody. As I said in the introduction, I'm lucky enough to have Sonny Tathgar on the call with us today. Sonny has become a close personal friend of mine. He's a fantastic lawyer here in Victoria with Stevenson, Lukes and Lee. Sonny, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. So, first question, nice and easy. Sell yourself a little bit. What exactly is your role as a lawyer throughout the real estate transaction?
It depends on what kind of transaction it is, if it's a sale or a purchase. If it's a purchase with a mortgage, basically what I do is facilitate transfer of ownership and funds from one party to another. As an example, if I'm doing a purchase with a mortgage for someone, I wait for the lender to send me mortgage documents. I wait for your office to send me a real estate conveyancing package. I put those together and I create land title documents, which I have the client come in and sign with me. They usually do about a week before the completion date. And at that time, they bring their down payment with them too. So they sign the legal documents, bring in their down payment. Then at on the completion date, I register those signed documents with land titles. I transfer the funds to the seller, and that's the end of the transaction.
Okay, fantastic. Is there any way that our clients can kind of streamline this process or make it easier for you?
Not really. It's pretty streamlined and easy. The purchasers or the sellers or the clients, they don't do very much in the transaction. So it would be your office that sends me the conveyancing instructions, and it would be the lender that sends me mortgage instructions. So clients really don't have to do too much. I send, as soon as we open up a file, we send out a questionnaire to the clients, and that gives us their pertinent information, names, SIN numbers, birth dates, everything we require to put a file together.
Yeah.
So they just fill that out, and it's really simple for the clients.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Well, that's fantastic. We are starting to see kind of every few months or so issues that are happening around real estate, whether it's in the news or whether it's in our own internal board. What are the most common litigation cases that you're seeing surrounding real estate transactions?
Well, I had one recently where I was representing a purchaser, and the seller had the property tenanted. The tenants didn't leave, even though they were supposed to by a certain date. They had received proper notice and everything. They just wouldn't leave. Didn't file a response or anything like that. So then we had to get an RTB hearing date. Took about a month to get, and then the RTB ruled in our favor. They were given a week to vacate, and they still didn't vacate. So then we had to get a bailiff to go in and remove them. So it took about 2 months. Fortunately, the sellers, they paid for our clients' out-of-pocket expenses, which included additional rent that they had to pay at the place they were currently staying
Mhm.
for 2 months. They lost a deposit on a function that they were going to hold at the property, and it was being catered. So they lost about $1,000 there. And they lost money on a moving truck. So it ended up being about $10,000 that the sellers were out of pocket. There's no winner on this. It was a lose-lose situation, but I've been seeing more not vacating when they're supposed to. And we have a system where tenants are favored. In this situation, it was inconvenient for our client because they didn't receive their property when they were supposed to receive it, and the sellers had to pay for this expense.
Right. Even though everything was, followed by the law. And I guess for those of you
That's
that are
right.
watching, yeah, for those of you that are watching, the RTB or the Residential Tenancy Act, I should say, it truthfully is written, in such a favor of a tenant that as Sunny just mentioned, we are starting to see a lot of issues coming around where, although all the correct paperwork is filed, everything is done correctly. At the end of the day, you can't physically force the tenant out unless you get the bailiff, like you had mentioned. So, always something to think about when you are going to look at tenanted properties, or kind of what's the worst case scenario here. But that's very good to know. I appreciate that. How important have you seen, or do you have any kind of almost case studies where, the importance of reviewing title charges?
It's important to know what's on the title of your property, whether it be a statutory building scheme or an easement or a covenant. It's important to know what comes along with that property.
Fantastic. And again, for those of you watching, when you get a title, you'll have certain charges or liens. A charge could be a financial charge, such as a mortgage or deferring of property taxes, but there could be these other charges that will carry with the property. Talking about an easement, like he had said, whether your neighbor might have access to your property and it's a driveway that's cutting over, a sliver. It could be a covenant, a restrictive covenant. We see this in Broadmead here a lot, where they don't want big RVs parked in the driveway, or they don't want livestock being held. And then the other one could be something like a statutory building scheme that you generally see in these older subdivisions, where it restricts your ability of what you can build on the property. It could be you have to use an iron fence, you have to use a certain brick or a certain color on your property. So again, reviewing these charges, making sure we know what we want or what we're walking into, of course, is very, very important. What happens if one of the parties just decides to not show up on completion day and sign the documents?
Well, it depends if it's a purchaser or the seller.
Right.
If a seller decides not to sell their property and they're in an unconditional deal, there's remedies that can be used. The purchaser can claim damages, specific performance, or a combination of both. If a purchaser decides not to go through with a purchase that they've committed to, they could lose their deposit and face further damages.
There's a couple more questions here. A lot of things that people don't really think about are, the extra costs associated with purchasing a property. So, one thing that often gets overlooked are property taxes. How do you go about, creating your statement of adjustments and prorating those taxes depending on the time of year that the purchase or the property is being purchased, excuse me.
If you purchase the place in September, the seller would have paid property taxes before July.
Hmm.
So, and that would have been done for the whole year because property taxes are calculated January 1st to December 31st. So if they paid for the whole year and you take possession September 1st, then you're paying September 1st to December 31st back to the seller.
Right. And if it's happening before July and property taxes haven't been announced yet or released, how do you guys determine what the property taxes are?
Same sort of situation. If it's, let's say if the property transaction happens March 1st, then we would be collecting funds from the seller because likely they haven't paid property taxes yet.
Right.
So it would be from January 1st to March 1st.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. And the final question is, and we get these questions a lot from our clients, especially if we're working on the buying side, but if the possession falls on the same day as closing, when can we get them access to the property?
I just say go by the contract. Usually there's a time stated in the contract,
Hmm.
so stick to what that says.
Perfect. Because I know in some scenarios, if the contract does say 5 p.m., the seller is already out, and it's before 5 p.m. and the property actually closes, then we are sometimes able to get into the property. Now, the problem is, and Sunny, I'm sure can talk about this briefly, is a lot of these properties don't close through wire transfers. Couriers get sent, so there's no exact time as to when Sunny can guarantee when it gets closed. He might get caught up at the bank. The courier might get caught up, in a lineup somewhere, traffic, whatever the case may be. So Sunny is very good at, having open communication with us, letting know exactly where we are throughout the steps of that day, as it can be quite stressful for you. So, for us as realtors, especially when we're working on the purchase side, we don't like properties closing on the same day as completion because we can't guarantee a time. So we don't want you sitting around with a moving truck and just waiting, and having that picker go up and up from the movers. We always try to get possession the next day so we know exactly when you can get in, and just make it easier from all around. So I think that pretty much covers it. Sunny, thank you so much. Was there anything else that you wanted to add in that you might think some of our viewers would like?
Do you want to have some like back and forth stuff where I ask you stuff too, or did you just want to stick to
Sure. Yeah, yeah, you can fire away. Please grill me.
what are you seeing in the market these days? What's volume like?
A bit of an oxymoron because it feels like it's been a bit of a slow year, but we're up about 11% from where we were last year in terms of active sales, right? So our inventory is higher than what we've seen in the last few years, but lower on our yearly, or sorry, on our historical average. So we do feel like it's a little bit more of a balanced market now, right? Sellers can go out and get a subject to sale on their property. Buyers can get conditional offers accepted now. However, we are starting to see things slightly increase. I think single families, and don't quote me on exactly the numbers, I think single families increased 2.7% this year and condos decreased 1.6%. So it's been relatively flat for the last few years. But with how Bank of Canada interest rates are moving, I think that's going to start putting upward pressure with the recent announcements in the government. Is that going to bring changes to housing policies, further densification? Who knows? But I do think that if interest rates keep on moving that the way that they're headed, that is going to put upward pressure. But that's coming with a little bit of an asterisk or a caveat because a lot of people hear, oh, Bank of Canada dropped their interest rates. That's fantastic. Boom, my mortgage rate's going to change. Well, Sonny, you know this. Maybe a lot of you don't know this, but the Bank of Canada interest rates only relate to a variable interest rate mortgage, right? It has nothing to do with the fixed rate. That's based off of the Canadian bond yield market. So although variable rates are dropping, if you've been, a 5-year fixed your whole life, then obviously it's not going to be really applicable to you. And we haven't seen that much change in the 5-year fix as we have seen the variable. Maybe now is the time to go back to variable as opposed to when, COVID hit and interest rates went up, 11 times in a year. So the market's good right now. I mean, we live in Victoria, right? And again, living in South Vancouver Island, living in Victoria, we're a little bit sheltered from the rest of Canada in terms of our market. We always have demand. That gap for out of town buyers is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now we're pushing 30%. So we're sheltered. We're always going to have that demand where we got the nicest weather in Canada. So we're starting to see more people kind of come out west. So I think our market is good. I think it's steady. I think it's good for both buyers and sellers.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've noticed my December and my January, they're quite busy, and historically those are slow months.
I would agree.
So
Yep.
I see a lot of volume right now compared to like I'm seeing numbers now that I normally see in like March or April.
Yep. I
Um,
agree.
what do you see moving most? Like condos? I check the MLS quite often. I don't see houses in the upper range that are very high quality or anything like
Yeah,
available right now.
for sure.
Um, are you seeing a lot more condo or townhouse sales or?
For December, condo sales were up 25% from December of last year. Single families increased 21% from December of last year. That's a little bit skewed because when you look at the year as a whole, like I said, condo prices decrease, and that has to do with Airbnb. That has to do with the large influx of supply that we've seen coming from, the West Shore. The West Shore has a saturation of condos that have hit the market, so that's pulling the prices down. I think luxuries, of course, is slow right now. Anything that's kind of that $3 million and up. The safest bet for where you're seeing that most turnover is that million to kind of 1 point, call it four-ish, especially with a suite if you're in town. Each pockets, of course, are going to operate quite differently. The West Shore is struggling right now because they have such a saturation of product. They've got a lot of townhomes. They got a lot of new builds that are floating in that 1.2, and they have that massive surplus of condos, like I had mentioned. So, generally, if you're in the core, you're relatively protected. Whether you've got that house, whether you've got that townhouse. The Victoria downtown condo market seems to be struggling right now. The Falls has, I think, 7 units in there, and a lot of them have been operating as an Airbnb. So When you, like I said, recently, when you look at the historical, we have low inventory, but we're not used to having this amount of inventory. So for us, it seems like we have quite a bit of inventory. And so things are just moving a little bit slower.
Yeah, that's a good point about the West Shore being saturated. I've noticed in that market about 1.2 to 1.5, there's actually stuff available in the West
Yep.
Shore
And it's sitting.
that's newer builds
Yep.
with suites too that look reasonably nice. And
Yeah, especially on Bear Mountain, right? You
yeah,
could
that's
pick up a
right.
real nice house on Bear Mountain for, we had a client buy one for 1.3 plus GST, brand new build, with a suite, right? So again, the opportunities are out there, and now that we kind of are coming out of that winter slump, that holiday slump, that I think 2025 is going to be a very busy year.
I do too. It's
Mhm.
already off to a pretty strong start. So, do you find most buyers come to you with a mortgage pre-approval already, or do you have to refer them to a mortgage broker right from the beginning? Like,
Yeah, great question. I would say probably about 50-50 right now. Generally first-time home buyers aren't pre-approved just because they're not used to the process. When you're dealing with somebody that's selling a property, they'll already have either, not necessarily pre-approved, but they've had conversations with their bank and they know what they can afford. So I would say it's 50-50.
so I actually think 2025 is going to be a big year for real estate transactions.
I do. I do. Like I said, Victoria is a kind of a sheltered little area, right? And we simply just always have that demand. And I think when we start to see a market that's a little bit slower paced or a little bit more balanced, that always brings confidence back to the market. That always brings buyers that maybe have been sitting on the sidelines, seeing that we have been steadily increasing, whether they've been waiting for a crash or not. I do think this is going to be a big year. Um, for the demand, for people thinking like I said, they can get into the market, they can get into the market safely by having conditions. On top of that, and this is not the best outlook, this is going to be the first real year where we're seeing everybody that bought COVID times are going to be up for renewal. Yes, they were able to get approved with the stress test that was higher than what they currently are right now. However, that was 5 years ago. Your payments have obviously jumped up quite significantly. There's a lot of things that could have changed, whether it's a job loss or a different job or whatever the case may be. It'll be interesting to see if we're going to see a large influx of supply coming in from these people and what's that's going to do to the market. If there is a massive supply, when you got more supply that, demand hasn't caught up to, of course, that's going to bring prices down. But as soon as prices go down and everybody starts noticing that, your demand is going to ramp back up and then your prices are going to go back up. So to answer your question shortly, yes, I think it is going to be a very, very busy 2025.
That's an interesting point. I didn't think about the COVID.
Hmm.
And you made another interesting point about Victoria being an anomaly earlier.
Hmm.
Um, it is ranked one of the best places in the world to live, along with
Hmm.
like Sweden, Switzerland, Munich, all those kind of places.
Yep.
Victoria always, and Vancouver, they always rank within the top
Yep.
10. So
Absolutely.
there's,
And like I said, people are coming, right? So
that's right. And it's a
yeah.
perfect retirement place, as you
Yep.
can see when you step outside and you walk around. There's a clear demographic here.
Yeah. It's January 7th, and what is it, 8 degrees right now?
Yeah, that's not bad.
All right, and that's everything I got for you guys. So I hope you learned something in this kind of more of a Q&A discussion. We really appreciate you guys logging in and watching this. So thank you so much. Sunny, thank you for your time. And before we jump off, is there anything else that you'd like to plug?
I post new blogs every month on my website, tathgarlaw.com. Check them out, they're good.
Fantastic. And again, Sunny Tathgar, Stevenson, Lukey's, and Lee. If you have questions about real estate, give him a call. We'll have his contact info down below. Thank you again for watching, and we hope to hear from you soon.